So you have been notified that this session is being recorded. Um, all right, so welcome again. I know there's some on the line, on the call that I have not met that are guests, and I'm so happy that you all are here. So just so that you know what you're participating in, my name is Cheryl Bridges, and I'm the CEO and founder of Bridges to Life, which is a faith-based life coaching organization that's dedicated to helping people understand who they are so that they can become who they want to be. You'll see, in addition to life coach, some other roles that I serve in. Primarily, the life coaching aspect is again to kind of come alongside people for support. And the monthly Through It All Thursday sessions are a way to maybe reach people that may not otherwise come across the path of Bridges to Life, but will be provided just with information that will help you hopefully and help them to navigate life, because there's so many life's transitions that we all go through. So prayerfully, each of these sessions every month help us to navigate. So again, welcome. Thank you for being here. Please feel free to, put something in the chat or raise your hand if you want to make a comment. We're very casual and comfortable here in this space. So, to just get started, I'm not going to talk long because I'm so happy to have someone who's an expert in this on our call, and I'm going to defer to her very shortly. But, handling grief, during the holidays or any time, when you think of loss, can somebody tell me, when you think of a loss, what is the very first thing that you probably think of? A loss of.
A loss of connection. Literally, I used to talk to Adam every day or share football on Sundays. So I've totally lost that talking connection.
Okay, and Janice, hello. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were here. Hello. But so she said lost. She mentioned Adam. Adam was Janice's son who passed away. So the loss that we initially connect with is the loss of an individual, right? We think about grief in terms of losing a loved one, a friend, a family member. But there's more to grief than just the loss of an individual. So some of those things, like we can experience the loss, right, of a job, even even a voluntary retirement is still a loss, because it's something that we have maybe been doing for 20, 30, however many years, and now we don't have that. That's a loss, even though it was our decision to do it. And then of course there are the jobs that we don't expect to lose also. Loss of relationships, the person may be living, but maybe we've had a falling out, or something has happened that caused a disconnection. Even a child leaving home. Now, as a parent, I wasn't sad when they left, but it still is. After a while, you're like, wow, this is very different. Some parents grieve that more than others. There's loss of innocence. Anybody know what I mean when I say loss of innocence?
Yeah.
Well, okay, what do you think? Whoever said, somebody said yes. And if not, loss of innocence meaning um, maybe even someone who was abused, molested as a child. That's their innocence is lost. It's gone. So that's also a loss that people um, can suffer. Divorce, separation. That's another loss, whether you're suffering through a divorce or just even a separation. And then even relocation. I'm moving now. So there's a loss. There's this whole change. So there's so many different types of loss in addition to grieving the loss of a death of a person. So we all probably have experienced different things in our lives with losses. So And while, we're going to talk about this evening many different ways. I'm sure that our presenter is going to share about how to handle some of this grief and loss. There's one way, one coping method that I just want to hit, and that is the word. The word, the word, the word. That's a go-to method to help us in our loss. And just two verses I just wanted to lift up that are kind of favorites of mine. Psalm 73:26 says, my flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. So my flesh may fail, my heart may fail, all of these things may come, but remembering that God is my strength. And then Matthew 5:4 says, God blesses those people who grieve and they will find comfort. There was a service earlier today that I attended, a funeral service for a young man, 23 years old. But, and I shared that my words really will never be able to comfort them in the way that is going to change how they feel. But God's words, that's where the comfort is. So I think ultimately, leaning on and relying on his word also help us to handle different things, but we need more than that too sometime, and that's okay. So that is where I am going to very happily introduce our guest for this evening. So if you all would meet Sandy, which we call her Stuart. Sandy is a native of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Any Philly folks in the house? She now resides in Raleigh, North Carolina. Sandy graduated from Lincoln University, HBCU proud. Um, she then kind of her travels took her to upstate New York, outside of Albany, New York, a suburb outside of Albany. She completed her master's degree there in education and also with a concentration in community counseling. Um, Sandy decided to specialize in grief support, actually. You'll see there she's a grief support specialist after losing her husband of 28 years just in 2018. After that, during that very difficult time for her, she realized that she could probably, turn her passion into helping others, to be able to support them as they go through similar losses too. Sandy is a member of Baptist Grove Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. She has two adult children and one grandson. And as you'll see, she is also the founder of Goal Driven Life Coaching. She's a certified life coach and, as I said, a grief support specialist. So we shall look forward to how Sandy is going to guide us in her own way. So I am going to turn this over to Sandy and welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here today. And I see some folks on here that are just making me smile and making my heart glad. And I am just so excited. Thank you, Cheryl and Bridges to Life, for inviting me to become a part of this event, Through It All Thursday, or some people call it Friday Eve.
Oh, yeah.
So, but it's good to see you. Good to see your smiling faces. Um, so Cheryl gave the introduction, and I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty good. But I do want to tell you that I grief is something that can be very difficult to deal with. And here we have the holidays. You either love them or you dread them for one reason or another. And for those who are experiencing grief at this time, it can cause so many different emotions and thoughts and feelings and even pain to come across this season of the year. I know that I have, since I've lost my husband, as we get closer to the holiday season, I find myself going, getting more and more like, I miss him. I miss him. I miss him year round. But then when we get close to the holidays, it's like, okay, I really miss him now. But you know what? I've had to deal with it and work through it. And hopefully, something that I say this evening will help you as well. I don't, if you want to say something, if you want to share something, please feel free to put it in the chat. And I'll have, I guess, Cheryl or someone will be monitoring that so that if there's something that you would like to say, just say, hey, so and so would like to offer this, because I want to hear what you have to say. The only thing about doing the Zoom, I like it. I like doing Zoom, but the only thing about it is you kind of lose that um, time when you're in a room together and you can look at people and you can see their faces, because some of you don't have faces, you just have names here. And my daughter is one of them, but she told me, Mom, I'm going to be cooking dinner. So I'm like, okay. So I understand that. Let's see, I am going to share my screen with you. I have some slides that I want to put up for you. And we'll see if we can't get this going. Cheryl and I were working with this earlier to make sure that we could get it.
You know, it always works when nobody's on.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
It came up. So, as Cheryl mentioned, I am the owner of Goal Driven Life Coaching. And this is a presentation for Bridges to Life on how to handle grief during the holidays. In addition to life coaching, I do grief support. I found that to be my passion. I don't know if any of you, when you're find a passion, something that you really enjoy doing, it really helps out. And I help feeling like I help other folks as well. So, grief is not only associated with death. Grief is a natural response to loss, and it can be experienced when we lose a relationship, and that relationship can be lost due to divorce, or it could be a falling out with a friend. We can lose a job that threatens our financial stability, and even retirement, as Cheryl mentioned, can bring on these feelings of loss. Now, there is no one way to grieve. And we all experience various forms of grief. We experience grief every day, pretty much in our lives. It can be, you can also think of it as disappointment. It doesn't have to necessarily be dealing with death. And there is no one way to grieve. No one can tell you how to grieve. No one can tell you how long to grieve, because grief has no timeline. If, however, you find yourself feeling that you will never move on and that you fall into deep depression and just can't seem to shake the feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, it might be time to seek some help from a professional. We don't know how long it might take for that pain to subside. Some articles that I have read indicate that as you get to the 6-month period, you might start to feel better, but the pain could still be there. So don't compare yourself with others, but think through the grieving process and allow yourself to go through it.
Sandy,
Yes, ma'am.
is there an average time of, not how long to grieve, but when you think it's time to maybe seek professional help?
I would say, from what I have read, between 6 to 12 months, if you're not starting to feel better, somewhat better, can start to enjoy some aspects of your life, that might be the time to really say, okay, I might need some help with this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sometimes we ignore the emotions that are a part of the grieving process. The emotions can include sadness, anger, guilt, and even relief. Uh, when I lost my husband in 2018, he was very sick. And I watched him probably for 10 to 15 years just steadily decline in health. And I know that he was hurting. He was having problems. His quality of life was not as good as it had been. And it was hard to watch that happen. So when he did pass, I did have a sense of relief because I thought he's not hurting anymore. He's not in any more pain. But at the same time, I felt guilty because I shouldn't be feeling this relief. But it wasn't relief that he was gone, but it was relief that he's not hurting any longer. And he doesn't have to deal with that. Some triggers of grief emotions can be certain scents. You know, you walk by somebody and you might go, that smells like my husband. That smells like my mom. That smells like my dad. And that can trigger some emotions in you. There are also certain sounds that might remind you of a particular event that you might have participated in. Even the sounds of when you might have participated with folks at a job that you had that you no longer have. You know, might hear something like that, or hear a song. You hear a song that you and your beloved person, you know, liked, or he or she liked, and you were like, but you hear that song and that brings back those memories, and that can trigger some emotions. That can trigger some tears. Also, seeing photographs that can bring back memories, trigger emotions, because they may be photographs of a relationship that you no longer have. One of the things that Cheryl put it well during her Instagram post is, it's okay to feel the emotions, just don't become them. And I thought that was a good statement. And it's okay. It is okay for you to feel those. And I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but just out of nowhere, you just start boo-hooing, or you go like, oh my gosh, what is that all about? That's your grief coming through. And it's good to allow it to come through, because if you hold on to that stuff, you know, it can be bad. It can be real bad.
Sandy, for me, I don't know what it was, but after my dad passed, like 2008, for several years, every time I was driving and saw a funeral car, like
Mm,
that was just always the trigger. Yep, and that went on for years.
wow.
But
Wow.
yeah, eventually, so yeah, I agree. Those triggers can come out of anywhere.
So I'm going to ask the participants here, anybody want to share something that might be a trigger for them?
I'm sure somebody has some triggers.
I
Feel free.
do. One of my triggers was "Smile." My brother loved that song. It took me a long time to listen to it.
The
Mhm.
Kirk Franklin. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Cheryl,
Yes. Uh-huh.
this is Tony. How are you?
Hi, Tony.
Hi. One of the things that was a trigger for me, my mom had a dog. And when my dog died, my reaction to his death, I felt was a combination of losing him in connection with her. And I felt it was like an overreaction. I really just felt there was some connection between this was my mom's dog, and now he's leaving, so they're both gone.
Sandy, you have any follow up to that?
Well, and I did was going to mention too, because when we lose pets, we grieve.
That's right.
Because I know about it. I still grieve my big old 125-pound chocolate lab. And he's been gone, oh gosh, it must be like 15 years or so now. And, you know, pets provide emotional support to you. One of the things that helps me out even around here is I have 2 cats. And one of them is a love bug, and he just sits in my lap. And when I pet him, I can just feel the stress going away. So people who don't have pets don't, you know, a lot of times people think it's just a dog or it's just a cat. But no, it's much more than that.
Yeah.
Much more than that. And I think with you, you associated the dog with your mom.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I did. Thank you.
So, yes, yes, that's
Thank
good.
you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else want to share?
Oh, this is Shirley.
Hi, Shirley.
Hi, before my husband passed, he was in a nursing home. So when I think about a nursing home with C1 or whatever, that's a trigger for me. But the thought of him is like always with me. He passed in February of this year. I have pictures all around the house. I looking at the pictures every day and I think of him all the time. But I guess the nursing home part is the worst part for me because that brings a feeling of guilt on my part. Because I feel guilty that he had to be there, especially at the time he was there when that terrible part of the pandemic set in. And that bothers me still a lot, that I wasn't able to have him at home during that time.
Right. Wow. You know, and it's funny, you know, I mentioned that we all grieve differently. And Shirley, you mentioned that, you know, you have pictures all over of him. I had a picture of my husband on a bookshelf. I finally had to move it because I found myself, I would sit on the couch and all I would do was stare at the picture. And I'm like, this can't be good. I mean, I have another picture of him there with the family, but all the time, all I would do is sit on the couch and stare at the picture of him. I would just sit and look and sit and look. And when I moved it to a different location, it helped me. But that's just to show you that there are different ways that we grieve and different things that work for us and things that don't work for us.
Yeah.
I haven't moved that picture back. I should move it back and see what happens. Okay, so I have a book here that is. Somebody else want to say something?
Hi, this is Mabel.
Hey.
In terms of a trigger, the sound of a telephone ringing triggers my grief. I lost my 2 sisters a year apart, and we talked multiple times a day, especially first thing in the morning. We would have our early morning chats and our chats just before we went to bed. So just the ringing, it took me a long time to accept the fact that ringing of that phone was not from them. And it was definitely a trigger spot for me.
Wow. 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 Thank you. Thank you very, very much for sharing that with us. A lot of people probably wouldn't even think about the ringing telephone, maybe bringing up that sadness and everything in you like it did. But thanks for sharing with that. Anybody else?
Yeah.
I will. This is Sharon. My husband passed in 2017, and we would always be at church together. And church kind of triggers, you know, feelings for me. The trip to the church while I'm in church and the trip home. Most of the time I would drive, and he would be on the passenger side, and, you know, we'd talk and whatnot. And before the pandemic, you know, when I would be on my way to church, I would just think about, and I would reach over sometimes like, you know, I want to hold his hand, which I would do, you know, when he was living. And when I would get into church, I would be there and I'd enjoy the service, but I always feel like there was a part of me that was just missing.
Hmm.
And then when I would look around and I'd see couples together, and I think to myself, I remember when I walked into church and I could sit here with him. I mean, I've gotten much better. It's just that church just it's a trigger for me. And then, as I said, then when I get in the car and I go home, many times the thought is we leave church, maybe we go get something to eat, but I miss that.
Mhm. Thank you so much for sharing that, because you just told my story. I don't have to change a word. You told my story.
And what she just said triggers something with me because my husband belonged to a different church than I did. And I used to take him to church every week. And the church was under renovation when the pandemic hit and we couldn't go back to church anymore. And of course, we still have some of that. But he passed in February, and his church has been open for a couple of months. And it's a much smaller congregation than People's, the church that I belong to. But they are spaced out there. And I think maybe, and I haven't been there, and I'm thinking maybe one of the reasons I'm not going, because I don't want to be along with a big crowd of people for one thing, but it seems like they're spaced out pretty well and they do the checking, the temperature, and they wear masks and all of that. But I'm thinking when you're talking about that, maybe one of the reasons too I haven't been, because I just felt so badly that the church is beautiful now. They did a fantastic job of renovating it because I was able to go in to see it since that finished. But the fact that I can't go back there with him, and for him to see the change, how the church has changed since he was there, it bothers me. I know it's going to hit me when I do go back there.
Mhm.
I'm going in without him, seeing the beautiful church as it exists now compared to how it was when I was with him.
Mhm. But you understanding that once you do go in to the church, you might be able to understand why you might cry or why you might experience some of those feelings when you go
Yeah.
in the building.
Yeah.
That will be helpful because you do understand that that's where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All righty. So during the holiday time, we need to practice some healthy habits, and the mind and the body are connected. And when you take care of one, you take care of the other. So the mind tends to experience a lot of stress when you're going through the grief process. So if you're not getting adequate sleep, if you're not eating a healthy diet, and if you're not getting some type of exercise, um, the body will just start to shut down, as well as the mind. So if you do some of these things, even if you're not grieving, that should be for everyday wellness. And I think Cheryl has um, presentations where she talks about self-care, her posts and everything, she talks about self-care. That is so important when you're going through the grieving process. Sometimes we don't have an appetite, we don't eat, we don't sleep, we don't exercise. So what does that do to you? What does that do to your body? You don't get outside and get some fresh air and some sunshine and get those endorphins going so you start to feel better. So this is important that you practice some healthy habits as you are going through the grieving process. During holiday season, let's not overschedule. Okay, we might become inundated with like party invitations or events or whatever, and it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, you know what, I really don't think I would be comfortable going to this function. It'd be a good idea for you to plan ahead and decide, which ones, talk to your family about which activities you want to do. But you can also be flexible, because if you say you schedule to do something on Monday, but Friday comes around and you're just not in a good space, it's okay. It's okay to not be okay and to say, no, I don't want to be around folks. Now, don't isolate yourselves, because that can, bring on a whole other set of difficulties that you'll go through by isolating yourself and not being around other people while you're going through this grieving process.
So Sandy, I really like that second bullet. Don't feel guilty about skipping the events, right? Like, sometimes we force ourselves, and then our authentic self is not showing up anyway. But I like that you said also don't isolate. So sounds like what you're saying here is a balance, right?
Yes, yes, you should have a balance. And like I said, if you plan ahead, you're more likely to say, okay, I'll do this because I plan to go, and not those spur of the moment things where you go, I didn't prepare myself to go and do this. But yeah, and let's be honest. There are some of those holiday events that we wouldn't have gone to anyway, even if we weren't grieving, we didn't want to go. So, it's okay. It really is okay to not go. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about coping skills. Actually, I want to go back one slide because I missed one here. Here we are. Now, during the holiday season, if you do, decide that you're going out and going to parties and doing like that, during the holiday season, we might tend to consume more alcohol than we normally do. And I think we all know that, and some of us don't consume alcohol at all. I'm not assuming that any of you are drinkers, but
nobody on here.
Oh, nobody on here is. I know that, but I'm gonna say it anyway. So let's not, because excessive use of alcohol can affect your physical health and then contribute to mental confusion. And then also thinking about some prescription drugs, and I know nobody on here does any of the street or illegal drugs. I know that. But sometimes we use those to take the pain away or to lift our mood. But the problem with that is, what happens when you stop the prescription drugs or you stop the illegal drugs or the street drugs? What happens? Anybody?
Withdrawal.
Addiction.
Withdrawal, addiction, or you just go back to where you were. I mean, it's not a thing that will help you to get rid of the pain or anything like that. It just kind of puts a Band-Aid on it for right now. So just think about that. Think about that. Okay, then we talked about, let's talk about coping skills. So there's just a few here that I've written down. And the thing is, you might want to maintain a hobby that you have, or you might want to go back to a hobby that you had. How many of us have things that we say, oh, I want to, I'm going to sew, or I'm going to knit, I'm going to crochet, I'm going to do something. And then you put it away and don't pick it up again. But maintain or try something new. Take a class. That will give you the opportunity to be around other people. Right now, most classes are virtual, but at some point, I'm believing that we might be going back to a classroom style where we can go into a class and have that social aspect of being around people. So let me see, I have some other things here. So if the whole family might want to get together and make a scrapbook with bringing back fond memories of your loved one, pictures. It's amazing how you can start talking with your family, friends about someone that you might have lost due to death. And as you start talking about things that happened, things that you went through, you'll find yourself laughing And oh, remember when so-and-so did this, or remember when so-and-so did that. And that is such a mood lifter to talk about and to remember. And making a scrapbook of memories is a good way to do that and to start that conversation going. You might want to volunteer. Volunteering can help you to feel better in terms of you're helping someone else, as you are also helping yourself. You could volunteer somewhere in memory or in memory of your loved one. And this is something that I don't do. I'm almost, not afraid, and not ashamed, but I don't write in journals. Some people say it's so cathartic to write in a journal and to write down your feelings and all of that. So I have tried many times to write in journals. I have this one and I have another one, and I sit down and I go, okay, I'm going to write down my feelings. And I go, okay. And it's not because I can't write my feelings, but it's just not something that I do. And I really want to try it. And one day I decided, okay, I'm going to write something. And I took the book and I wrote in the book and I wrote, I don't want to write in this journal. So while that's something that might not help me, it may help you. Hey, and maybe next year, if I see you again, I'll tell you, I started my journal and I got that going. So anybody have any other coping skills that they might want to share? Something that they've done that's helped them?
Sometimes, Sandy, I like to sing actually, and like when I lost my dad in 2008, he was a singer, and so we have a CD of like all the songs he sang for years and years and years. But it took me about 4 years to actually begin to listen to the CD. But once I started, I felt like just sometimes singing with that or just on my own just kind of it keeps me present.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Sandy, we have about 15 minutes too.
Okay.
Mhm.
All righty. All right. I think I'm gonna make it. Anybody else want to share coping skills? Okay. All right. So holiday traditions, those can be hard because you might have had someone who did certain things for the holidays and they're no longer here. Um, the traditions may be difficult to continue doing because the key individual is no longer in your life due to death, divorce, breakup of a relationship. There's other traditions that you might not be able to continue to do is because you may have lost some financial resources, you've lost your job. Or if you're suffering from medical issues, losing your health uh, doesn't allow you to celebrate as you usually do. But you can still kind of honor those traditions by, and I have a few here, like making a donation in memory of your loved one, cooking the favorite recipe of your loved one. Now, my husband made the best gumbo, and we just loved eating his gumbo. So we found the recipe, and we've been trying to make it like his. Haven't quite gotten it yet, but even if you don't get it exactly the way they did it, just going through the process and saying, well, he wouldn't have put that in there, or he would have put that. Remember that time we had that pot of gumbo and we ate gumbo every day for a week, but we wanted it, so that's something that you could possibly do. Cook their favorite recipe. For the financial resources being cut, you might have to scale back on your purchases. One way to do that is to do grab bags, do a family grab bag, so that you're not putting out so much money on individual gifts. Or you may do a gift, let me see, a certain amount that each person can spend. One time we did this, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but we put like a $10 limit on the gift. You will be amazed at how hard you have to go out there and find a gift that is not cheesy for $10. But it makes you think about the person and what they might like. And you're not going in and spending hundreds of dollars on gifts because, quite honestly, that's not what the season is about. We all know that. We all know that. So you can also honor the tradition. I think I did say make a donation in memory of your loved one to a charity, something that they would enjoy doing, or even like their alma mater. You can make a donation to their alma mater in their name. Okay. You may want to have another, let me see, I'm gonna go to the next slide. You can make new holiday traditions. And what you do, again, I said, make a donation in memory of your loved one. You can create a memory box or a memory book. Don't forget to include the children and other family members in this whole process of doing new holiday traditions. You may want to have another family member do what your loved one did during the holiday season, such as praying before a meal, carving the turkey. Just, making sure that you do new traditions that will keep going forward for the family and making everyone feel a part of the family and not that they suffered this loss and can't do things together anymore.
Yeah, I think that's really important too, trying to carry on, and not just stop because, we a lot of times we realize the person would want us to carry on to some of those traditions. So I think that's helpful in
Right.
in coping. Mhm.
Okay. Don't compare your holiday with others. If you don't want to decorate for the holidays, it's okay. It's okay. Don't feel guilty about not sending holiday cards. And also limit social media and don't compare what you do with what's online, because some of the posts that you see are not real. And people will put things up and make you think that, they have all of this going and they don't have a light or a tree anywhere. So really, do what you can, do what you feel you can do, and don't compare yourself with others. Don't feel guilty again if you know, don't want to do any of that stuff.
And Sandy, really quick, I just
Mhm,
noticed in the chat, I think when you were talking about, coping strategies and things that people do, someone
mhm.
added in the chat, paint by numbers art.
Oh,
Hmm.
that's a good one. That's
Hmm.
a really good one.
Yep.
And other things like that, painting by numbers or the pencil, the adult coloring books,
Hmm.
puzzles, if you like putting puzzles together or something like that. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit here is ask for help if you need it. Not a sign of weakness. You can talk to a trusted friend, a clergy member. There are support groups for bereaved persons, and they even go so far as being specific as parents who've lost children, persons who've lost spouses, and then you can also work with a professional counselor. So it's not a sign of weakness. And you know what? It doesn't matter how long ago you've experienced the grief, because the holidays can kind of bring that back to the front of your mind,
Yeah.
versus you kind of going on for the rest of the year. sometimes some folks, they don't know exactly what to say when, you're expressing that, hey, I'm having trouble. That's why, this list is good. And then you can also look for support groups, because people in support groups tend to have the same feelings and things that you have. It might be because of different situations, but they can identify with you with what's going on. Okay, before I end, I want to ask, does anyone have any questions, any thoughts, any ideas? Is dinner ready?
It might be late for that.
Pizza.
Mm.
Okay. So for my last slide, I just want to share my information here. That's a telephone number there where you can reach me. The goaldrivenlifecoaching.com is my website. I would love it if you would go on the website and take a look at it and browse through it. And I do have a form on the website that you can fill out. If you use the discount code B2L21, then I will do a complimentary session with you with regard to your grief.
Mm.
That's Bridges to Life 21. And I want to thank you so much for your attention, for the comments, for your support. I wish all of you to have a wonderful holiday season and get through it, but don't feel that you cannot express the grief that you may be feeling at the time. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
that.
Thank you.
Sandy.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And
Thank you.
if you could
Thank you.
stop sharing, Sandy.
Yes, ma'am.
It's just when you're, I don't know, I can't see everybody. That gets on my nerves.
Oh.
But thank you so much. You know, I think one of the biggest things you talked about even this evening is about, emotions and saying that it's okay. Whatever it is you're feeling, it's okay. Just, don't become it. But, and then the fact that we all have these different triggers, I spoke with somebody today that said, they smell apple pie and their mother always made apple pie, and that just brings them back. So as you said, Sandy, it could be a scent, it could be anything, but it's okay. And I like in the beginning where we talked about maybe if you're really struggling for more than a year or so, I think you said that may, you may need some additional support in processing that. So we just thank you for the coping techniques, some of the strategies. It's okay to say no, honoring holiday traditions. And as you said, there's no right way. Everybody's going to have a different way that they're going to to grieve, and that they're going to heal and recover. So I think everybody should individually know that it's okay. Whichever way you decide, it's okay. So Sandy, thank you so much. And then again, I encourage you to check out goaldrivenlifecoaching.com. And if you want some more support with some grief and loss that you're dealing with, you got a B2L discount code, so we appreciate that. And also, before we go, just the last few minutes, also, in addition to Sandy being my wonderful guest, and I thank you again for joining, Sandy, I also am excited that Minister Yvonne Davis Robinson is on the line. And she provides leadership to the Family Life Ministry at the People's Community Baptist Church, where I'm a member of here in Silver Spring, Maryland. She supports individuals who are grieving and who've lost loved ones, and she does such an amazing job with that. It's a difficult task. So I would just like her to just offer a few thoughts, and I am pretty sure I just saw her name, and then I don't see it anymore. Oh no, she's there. Okay. Just a few thoughts from her perspective, also to kind of undergird what Sandy, our grief support specialist, also said. So, Minister Yvonne, just a few closing remarks. We would love it to hear from you. And you're on mute, Minister Yvonne. That mute thing always gets us. And I think she's
Okay.
hard too, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
there you
Yeah.
are. Hello.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
Um,
evening.
I want to begin by thanking you, Cheryl, for asking me to be part of this. And I'm sorry I was late signing on, but we were doing a recap of our grief share, surviving the holidays. Um, just trying to see what we did right, what needs improvement, and what we should never do again. And so I apologize for being late signing on. But I also want to say that I'm excited to see some of the people who were in that session are part of your group tonight. Um, Whatever it takes to get through grief, don't feel like you're going to too many sessions or um, not enough. You have to do what's most comfortable for you. And again, I'm glad to see um, some of those people who were at Grief Share Surviving the Holiday here with you tonight. I believe that you got some additional information. The idea of journaling is very important for two reasons. Like the presenter Sandy said, everybody can't journal, but we know that we're often told that we should journal just our life experiences so that we can see where we are and then look back on it and see the progress that we've made. But it is difficult for some people to actually sit down and write their thoughts for any number of reasons, but it is a good resource. Everything that Sandy presented that I heard is pretty consistent with what we know to be helpful. Um, if you can cook the meal that your grandma made, and you want to do it during the holidays, then do it. And I believe you'll feel grandma's presence in the kitchen and at the table. But if it doesn't turn out right, like the gumbo, where you needed some tweaking, that gives people something to laugh about. It is something that you can share, like, boy, she sure did mess that gumbo up, or wow, she made the gumbo better than her husband did, or never again should she make gumbo. But again, it brings the family together, it draws them in. The idea about scrapbooking, I think, is wonderful. As you mentioned that, Sister Sandy, the first thought that came to my mind is I still have a lot of pictures from the old days when you took your film to the drugstore and got it developed.
Mhm.
And my kids said to me, Ma, you need to throw these pictures away because we don't know who's in them. But we took them for a reason, right? We took them because we wanted to hold on to a legacy. So
Sure.
that might be a good way to preserve the legacy of your whole family. And I know Jan's family did genealogy research. It would be good for her grandson and other family members to be able to see a picture that goes with the name. So I think that that's very helpful. I, again, want to wish everybody a very blessed Thanksgiving. I want you to know that we will be praying with and for you, that your pain will be minimum. But I do always say to people, if you feel like crying, please cry.
Mhm.
Don't try to hold it in. Um, and Cheryl and Sandy, you all can correct me if I'm wrong, but tears are cleansing, and tears help us get through. And if you hold it in, the illness that Sister Sandy mentioned may come upon you because it's stress. It's confining, and uh, you just need to release if you can, when you can. Um, and it may, you may look ugly when you're doing it, but that's okay, because you'll feel better afterwards. And I just think that that's so important. And don't feel bad because you feel bad. Don't beat yourself up because you're not in the holiday spirit, and you're feeling the way that you feel. Um, what you are feeling is um, normal, unless, as Sister Sandy said again, it goes on for too long. But we hurt. We hurt because we loved, and we hurt because we lost. And it's going to take time, because healing of any sort takes time, and grief doesn't go away overnight. And please don't let anybody tell you that if you're a Christian, or if you believe in God, or if you read the Bible, then you shouldn't be feeling that way. Grief is another word for love.
Mm.
So that's what I would share. And I thank you for the presentation that I heard. I thank you all that you, I thank you, Sandy and Cheryl, that you thought enough of people to present this very important session um, tonight. And Cheryl, you do it every month on a Thursday. So I just thank you for being sensitive to the needs of the people, because there are a lot of people hurting. I would add one more thing, if I may, and that is, I believe our grief is compounded right now in this particular time because of COVID and
Mhm.
because of the current political situations that are going on. I
Sure.
believe that we're on edge because of what might happen in the two trials that are going on. We're on edge because, we're constantly being bombarded, even if we don't turn on the news, by political bickering and backbiting, and the aggression that we see in people, even when we're driving down the street.
Mhm.
So I would suggest that um, when we feel that anxiety or that sense of being anxious, that we take time to breathe. And I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to myself too. Take time to breathe. Um,
Yes.
just breathe. We'd be surprised at how many times we stop breathing because we're overwhelmed.
Mm.
So again, I thank you for your time and attention. I thank Cheryl and Sandy. I can't thank you all enough. And I thank everybody for having the, as my girlfriend says, wherewithal to want to be part of this. It's just so important.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you so much, Minister Yvonne. Appreciate your words. And she's so right about those tears. Those tears, when we cry like from pain and grief, that's not like the same kind of tears you cry when you cut the onion. That's totally different. Those tears that are coming from your emotions, they're releasing chemicals that are going to help you deal with the stress. So it is okay to cry. So, Minister Yvonne, thank you. Sandy, thank you so much. GoalDrivenLifeCoaching.com. If you need support in someone coming alongside you to help with grief, bridgestolife.com. If you also want to learn more even about your temperament sometimes is the reason why you handle grief differently than someone else too. So learning more about that is possible too. So thank you all so much for being here. Please feel free to join again on a Thursday. December, I think we'll be talking about celebrating you because you deserve it. How about that? So,
Also,
yes,
may I
yes.
also, please consider, if you haven't already done so, signing up for the Surviving the Holidays seminar that will be offered on December 5th at the church. And Cheryl's going to be one of the co-facilitators. So you'll be in good company.
Yes, the People's Community Baptist Church website, tpcbc.org.
Yes.
has the link to register there for surviving the holidays, the grief share program that'll be presented on December 5th. So, all right, thank you all so much. If I dare ask my brother, Minister Tony Miller, if he would just say a prayer to close us out. I'm so glad to see you and my sister Gloria. I would appreciate that.
Sure. We do apologize as well. We was actually on the same Zoom as Minister Yvonne on the surviving grief meeting.
Yep. So it's her fault.
But
Okay.
we thank God for what we heard thus far was just uplifting to our souls. So
Amen.
we
Amen.
thank you, Facilitator Sandy, and you as well, Cheryl.
Yeah.
So let us pray. Father God, in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ, we thank you because we know, Father, that Jesus wept and Jesus grieved for Lazarus. Grieving is just compassion for your people. And we know, Father, that you have compassion and love for the people, all people. And we thank you that if you have your Son shed a tear, we can shed a tear of compassion for those who we come in contact with. And we pray, Lord, that the tears and the prayers of the righteous avail much. And we pray, Father, that in the name of your Son, Jesus, we were able to celebrate recovery and life and celebrate the people who have transitioned on, that they are never gone from us, but absent from the body, is present with the Lord. And so we thank you, Father, for these opportunities and these privileges to serve. And this is our prayer, that we love one another while we're here, and we give our roses and flowers while we're alive. In the name of Jesus the Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.